All right, when you guys are done with your brainstorming, you'll want to check with Mrs. Cantrell or I, and we will look at your plan. Again, we're not going to judge you for your sketchiness. Look at how crazy that is. We're going to make sure that you understand the way that your layers will work. We're going to also want to look at your source imagery to see where you got your ideas, and then it'll be time for you to be granted your 4 pieces of paper. If you're going to be using an embellishments, get that paper later because you might be able to use scrap paper. When you're working on your first layer, you're going to start out by drawing. And just like when we practice this, we're going to work from top to bottom. So I'm going to start with my white piece of paper, and I actually want to make sure that all my other papers are put away. I don't want anything to happen to them. I want to make sure that they're carefully put away and off to the side. You want to have out your sketch, and you also want to have out your original source imagery. For my layer 1, that's my stag. So I have my sketch here. I also can refer to my sketch on the back. Remember that when you are working, you want to make sure that you only have pinky of the edges. Otherwise, you're going to get too close to the edges. So I'm just going to sketch out my stag. When you're sketching on these final papers, you want to sketch very, 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 very lightly, because erasing is going to be difficult because you have such intricate cut area. Make sure to erase carefully. You don't want to wrinkle up your paper. Less pressure is better. And I'm also going to do my sunset picture. Before I cut, I'm making sure that what I'm actually cutting, I'm kind of making those shapes a little bit darker so I don't get confused. If it even helps you guys, you can even do something like this where you draw lines that tell you like, hey, I need to cut this little rectangle out. I need to cut this big shape out. I know that that helps me sometimes when I'm getting ready to cut. I'm gonna cut both my first layers. And make sure that you're always very comfortable with your hands. Always remember to flip it to the back because you can more easily see where you missed connections. Be very gentle. Remember, the outside edge is what's going to be part of it. The stag is going away. So I want to be very gentle with the edges of my paper. So this is where you want to inspect your work and fix any mistakes. I can tell that I have a little bit of a little line right there. Part of what you're being graded on is good craftsmanship. So you want to make sure to be very careful if you have any corrections to mistake. You don't want to make your work look worse, but I see a little hanging piece right there. A really simple pass by with my blade will get that cleaned off. So before I go on to my next layer, something that I want to do is erase these pencil lines. I want to be very careful, so I'm going to make sure that I'm holding my hand down as I'm very gently erasing, especially around your edges. You just barely want to take the eraser around them just to get off that pencil. And I have my first layer of my stag. Now I'm gonna do the black too, doing the shape window. I have a lot more cuts on this one. I have a lot more negative space that I'm cutting out. Now with your pictures like this, keep this stuff. You might want to use this in your journal. You might want to use some of the space in here to make little embellishments on your work, but don't throw away things that you cut out. You might end up using them. You can use smaller envelopes we have in the classroom for them. It's always best to start on the small stuff first when you still have a lot of gripping space. So I'm going to do the very teeny tiny stuff first before I have a big amount cut out of my work. All right, now that my 2 layers are done, I want to go back to my planning, and I know that I'm going to be on the purple for the sunset, and I can see that shape's going to be way different than the first shape. And on my stag, I'm going to be on the black, and I'm going to be drawing somewhat of a complicated shape with Hogwarts. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that my 2 papers are lined up, and I'm going to use my pencil to first go around. I'm gonna leave the stag ears, just antlers, just black, but I do wanna go in a little bit. I'm going in about 1/8 of an inch if you wanna be super exact about it, because I do want a little bit of the black to show and then the 2 greens to show as I move in. So I'm just, instead of outlining right next to the edge on my paper, I'm outlining inside of the edge. And so when I remove that, it's gonna look very different from this. I'm gonna wanna very carefully put my stag back in here. I recommend that you guys take your practice paper and fold it and keep your colorful papers and any delicate cut papers inside of there. So it's almost like you have a folder inside of an envelope. Now I know I'm going to have this part of the castle right here. So now I know I don't need to cut down here. So I want to make sure to erase that line so I don't get confused. And when I put my stag over here, that's why I don't need to cut. I want this to stay black. I want it to stay anchored. But what I can think about is how I'm going to do the rocks and the windows, because I do want those to be cut. So this shape right here is one big shape that I'm going to cut out. And then in addition to that, I'm going to have lots of little cuts that are here. So now I'm going to do the same planning for my sunset picture. Now the only difference with this is I'm going to go to the outside of the actual frame. I'm not going to go around the palm trees. I just want them to kind of stick out the way that they are. So I'm taking a little bit of artistic license here. I don't want the purple to be over here either. I want it to be like the frame that it originally was. But it is good for me to kind of like make little notes, like I know that that's where that stuff is, so I don't go too far over. So according to my plan, I'm gonna have a horizon line that goes over. I want to make sure it is in the right spot on my picture. And all of this isn't going to get cut. It's going to stay. So I want to make sure to erase that so I don't get confused. So as of right now, this big shape is what's going to be cut. The rest of it is going to stay. But when I refer back to my pictures, I have some purple clouds coming off of it. So remember, those purple clouds have to be anchored. If I was to cut this cloud and cut this, the purple clouds would be away. If I want the purple clouds to stay, this positive shape has to be anchored to the whole edge here in order for it to work. So I'm going to make sure I erase those lines so I can keep some nice purple clouds going on. So these things are going to stay connected. Now here's where it can get confusing. I want my whole water to be pretty much purple because it is at sunset time. So I want to make sure that I make these big cuts so that pink and orange and yellow can be revealed underneath. So I'm going to make really big waves, and this is going to be a cut shape. This is okay because around it's not being cut away. So clouds staying, cutting around the clouds, waves going because I want the pink to be revealed. Kind of is always a good idea to remember whatever you're cutting is going to be revealing what's underneath. Whatever you're not cutting or whatever's staying is going to stay that color. Oh, I'm going to stop what I'm doing right now because I just remembered that cutting smaller shapes is better. So cutting out all of my windows and my rocks is going to make my life easier because I have a bigger chunk to hold on to. So I'm going to literally stop in my tracks and work on the small details first. I know that's opposite way of thinking of normal. The last layer that's going to be cut. So according to my plan, I'm doing a lime green behind these colors. It's very spooky. And for my shape frame, for my beach frame, I'm gonna be doing this pink. So for the third layer, you're gonna start the same way, referring to your plans, like always. So really for this one, I'm just keeping it pretty much intact except for some flames. So I'm gonna get that white one out of the way so I don't confuse myself. And I'm just gonna go around that 1/8 of an inch. I'm gonna draw some flames. And I'm just gonna double check that all my shapes are anchored. On my sunset, I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna go in 1/8 of an inch. I'm actually gonna ignore my clouds though. I'm not gonna ignore them, like I'm just not gonna go around them. You can if you want to. Let's just do it for fun. But I also wanna add like some other clouds that overlap, so it's good to know where they are. And I'm gonna draw a little bit of a wavy line on top. Now, I know that any clouds that I add to the top have to be anchored to the outside, but I know that inside, if I want my pink to show, I need to make sure to make it a little bit smaller than what I have. I do want to do 1/8 of an inch inside. It's kind of weird up here because we're going around it. That's because these are anchored, these are negative space. These cuts should be getting easier and easier since your designs for each layer are getting smaller and smaller. And I'm pretty happy with that. One thing that I actually wish that I would do is I want some of the dark green to be down here. And I just now realized that. So what I'm gonna do, I could also put some green fire here too. So remember, anywhere where you cut is going to be revealed. So I'm gonna just do a few flames of dark flames. And then I want to just show some rocks, some of the dark green rocks down here too. And it's okay to change things as you go and make, you're feeling more confident and you realize it would have looked better. So I'm going to make those changes really fast. Oh, yeah. Ooh, that's the stuff. So that is looking pretty fire. See what I did there?
Next up is cutting small paper details and gluing them to at least one of your layers.